In the land of Ooo, where colour and chaos fill every corner, silence is rare. Trees whisper, rivers hum, the sky itself seems alive with movement. Every being, from the smallest candy citizen to the greatest cosmic entity, expresses some spark of life, through sound, through motion, through desire. But the Lich moves differently. He speaks rarely, acts slowly, and radiates not noise but absence. To encounter him is to experience something Ooo almost never shows: stillness. In that stillness lies the purest kind of evil, not fire or fury, but the unshakable calm of inevitable extinction. The Lich does not shout, boast, or rage. He does not revel in destruction the way other villains might. His presence carries no joy, no satisfaction, not even hate. Instead, he represents the complete erasure of emotion itself. His evil is not reactionary, it is fundamental. In a world where even monsters are full of personality and contradiction, the Lich's lack of both is what makes him truly terrifying. He does not want revenge, nor does he crave power for its own sake. His purpose is simple, pure, and horrifyingly still, the end of all life. This quietness is not emptiness, it is precision. Every word he speaks, every motion he makes, carries weight because it is deliberate. The Lich wastes nothing, not language, not gesture, not intent. When he speaks, the air around him seems to stop listening to anything else. His voice is calm, almost polite, but beneath it is the vibration of a universe forgetting itself. This control separates him from the chaos of Oo's other evils. While many beings embody disorder, the Lich embodies finality, the kind of order that comes when everything has ended. To understand the Lich's stillness, it helps to see how Ooo defines life. In this world, life is movement, stretching, growing, singing, laughing, fighting, evolving. It is energy without rest. Jake's body stretches beyond reason. Princess Bubblegum's creations multiply endlessly. And even time itself bends and loops in strange, living ways. The Lich stands as the perfect opposite to this. He does not stretch, grow, or transform. He does not participate in Oo's dance of creation. He is the point where movement stops. His stillness is not passive, it is active resistance against life's persistence. Visually, the Lich's design reflects this symbolic stillness. His skeletal form lacks the softness of flesh. His eyes burn but do not flicker. His gestures are minimal, a raised hand, a slow turn of the head, a single step forward. Every motion feels preordained, as if he has already calculated the shortest path to the end of everything. Where other creatures fidget, hesitate, or express emotion, the Lich simply exists. That simplicity is what makes him monstrous. He is not complicated, he is complete. This calmness gives him a strange kind of authority. In a world full of laughter and noise, his composure feels alien, almost regal, when he speaks. Even the most powerful beings pause. His words carry the weight of inevitability, like gravity or decay. He does not need to shout because the truth of his purpose is already absolute. In this way, his stillness mirrors the quiet inevitability of death itself. Death does not rush, it does not argue, it does not compromise. It simply waits, patient and certain. There is also a philosophical dimension to this stillness. Most of Oo's villains are driven by emotion, greed, jealousy, loneliness, or hunger. The Ice King's madness springs from heartbreak. Marceline's vampiric hunger is tied to her desire for connection. Even Golb, for all his chaos, feels like an expression of disorder's endless movement. The Lich, however, has transcended emotion. His detachment makes him something beyond human, beyond mortal, beyond even time. He is not merely an enemy of life, he is life's negation. His stillness represents the point at which desire itself dies. This makes the Lich's presence strangely seductive in a philosophical sense. In his calm, there is a kind of peace. Where Oo's creatures struggle, worry, and suffer, the Lich offers an end to all struggle. His evil hides behind the illusion of serenity. He does not rage against life. He erases the need to rage at all. This is what makes him more terrifying than any raging beast. He offers the promise of quiet, of an end to pain, at the price of existence itself. To stand before the Lich is to stand before meaninglessness. He does not need to destroy violently because his mere presence dissolves purpose. Heroes like Finn and Jake live through energy and emotion, courage, loyalty, fear, joy. The Lich does not fight those feelings, he nullifies them. His calm disarms passion. His silence swallows language. His stillness erodes motion. In his gaze, everything stops being what it was. This is the essence of his evil, not opposition, but negation. And yet, this stillness also gives the Lich a kind of purity. In a world full of contradictions and chaos, he is consistent. He never changes, never wavers, never pretends. His purpose is absolute. In that sense, he represents the ultimate form of clarity, the terrible kind that comes from having no conflict within oneself. Most beings in Ooo are divided, uncertain, or searching for meaning. The Lich is not. He has found his meaning, and it is the end of all others. That certainty, that stillness, is what makes him unstoppable. Symbolically, the Lich's stillness mirrors the way fear works in silence. Loud horror can be faced, but quiet horror seeps in. When nothing moves, when sound disappears, imagination takes over. The Lich is that silence, the fear that waits patiently, the dread that doesn't need to chase. He is the space between breaths, the pause before the end. His presence makes Oo's noise feel fragile, reminding us that life's energy is not eternal. And yet, in his stillness, the Lich gives life its definition. Without him, Oo's chaos would lack contrast. His calm makes movement meaningful. His silence makes laughter precious. His certainty makes choice profound. The Lich's evil is necessary to reveal what life truly is: restless, imperfect, fleeting. His stillness forces Ooo to keep moving, to resist, to continue. In this paradox lies his purpose. By embodying death so completely, he ensures that life must keep defining itself against him. The Lich does not rage, because rage is temporary. He does not scream, because screaming wastes air. He simply is, and in being, he fulfills his nature. His stillness is the shadow cast by Oo's motion, the cold truth behind its warmth. Every dance, every laugh, every act of love gains meaning because somewhere the Lich waits in silence, reminding the world that all motion ends. In the stillness of the Lich, adventure time finds its balance. For every heartbeat there is silence. For every flame, a shadow. And in that shadow, the Lich waits, not as chaos, not as noise, but as the still, quiet certainty that all things, someday, must rest. To understand the Lich's purpose, we must first understand his beginning, not as a moment in time, but as a consequence. In Ooo, creation and destruction are inseparable. Every birth leaves behind an echo. Every act of life throws a shadow. The Lich is that shadow made flesh, the condensation of every violent impulse that once tore the world apart. He was not born the way other beings are. He was left over. The Mushroom War marked the end of the old world. When human weapons consumed the earth, the explosion did more than annihilate bodies. It ruptured the fabric between life and death. From that wound, something crawled out that was not alive, but remembered what life had been. That residue of destruction coalesced into intent, and that intent took shape. Thus the Lich emerged, not a survivor of the war, but its continuation, the last breath of humanity's desire to end itself. This is why the Lich feels ancient, yet modern, mythic, yet technological. He carries the memory of the bomb within him, a reminder that the tools humanity built to protect itself became the seeds of its extinction. His skeletal form recalls the bodies left behind, his green fire the toxic radiance of the blast. Every flicker of that light whispers that civilization's greatest triumph was also its undoing. Symbolically, the Lich is the war that never ended. Ooo was rebuilt on top of ruin. New life sprouted from irradiated soil, strange creatures evolved from what remained, and magic flooded into the cracks science had opened. The Lich, however, never rebuilt. He is the ruin. He is what the world tried to bury and could not. That persistence makes him more than a monster of destruction. He is the memory of destruction itself, the proof that history's worst moments never fully die. Unlike other monsters who act from need or emotion, the Lich's origin gives him a purity of purpose. He exists because the world once wanted to stop existing. He is that wish, frozen into being. When he seeks the end of all life, he is only fulfilling the command encoded in his creation. He does not rebel against his nature, because his nature is rebellion against existence. This connection to the Mushroom War also explains the Lich's strange relationship with humanity. Though he despises life, he is a human creation in the deepest sense, the child of human fear. Every civilization imagines an ending. The Lich is what happens when that imagination manifests. In him, human self-destruction becomes eternal. He is the part of humanity that could not forgive itself. Visually, this history lives in his design. The bones that form his body look ancient, but the green glow inside them feels artificial, radioactive, almost technological. He is both corpse and reactor, magic and machine. This duality reminds us that the borders between science and sorcery, life and death, are thin in Ooo. The Lich is where they collapse entirely. Philosophically, his birth raises a haunting question. If destruction creates something new, is it ever truly destruction? The Lich answers by existing. He proves that even annihilation leaves a residue, that endings generate new forms of being. But those forms carry the intent of the end within them. He is the paradox of survival, to live only as the continuation of death. The Lich's origin also reveals why he cannot be reasoned with. He was not made through conversation or compromise. He was forged from finality. His mind is the aftershock of catastrophe. To speak with him is to speak to an echo that only repeats one truth. All things must end. He has no capacity for doubt, because doubt belongs to life, and life created him precisely to remove doubt through destruction. In this sense, the Lich is a moral mirror for Ooo. Every time the living rebuild, their creations rest on the same foundations that birthed him. The Candy Kingdom, the Flame Kingdom, the countless new societies, each uses the relics of the old world. Their stability depends on forces that once destroyed everything. The Lich is the reminder that those forces are still there, waiting. His existence asks, can peace built on ashes ever last? Yet, paradoxically, the Lich also ensures that life continues. His threat unites Oo's fragmented kingdoms, giving them a common cause. Without him, their divisions might consume them from within. The creature born of humanity's end becomes the reason its descendants endure. This irony defines his purpose. He is the perpetual danger that keeps the world alive. Symbolically, his origin teaches that evil in Ooo is never foreign. It grows from the same soil as good. The Lich's creation out of human hands, human fear, and human war shows that monstrosity is not imported from elsewhere. It is the consequence of what civilization refuses to face. The magic that now covers Ooo did not erase those origins, it only changed their form. When we look at the Lich, we are looking at the memory of the world itself. He is not an invader, but an inheritance, the embodiment of every destructive instinct that once defined humanity. His calm, skeletal frame carries within it the hum of old engines, the silence after alarms stop ringing, the echo of 1,000 vanished cities. He is the history Ooo cannot escape, walking, speaking, and waiting to finish what began long ago. In the end, the Lich's origin is not just a tale of how a monster came to be. It is the story of how death became self-aware. From the ashes of a world that destroyed itself, death learned to speak, to think, and to remember. That memory is his curse and his fuel. As long as something in Ooo remembers the war, the Lich will remain patient and purposeful, the perfect child of humanity's final invention, oblivion. Evil in Ooo often announces itself through noise. Villains shout, laugh, boast, or sing. Even danger has rhythm and melody in a world that hums with constant motion. But when the Lich speaks, the sound of life falters. His voice is quiet, deliberate, and stripped of the emotion that gives language warmth. To hear him is to be reminded that speech can carry more than thought, it can carry the end of thought. The Lich's words are rare and precise. He never wastes them. His sentences are shaped like incantations, but not of magic, of finality. When he speaks, he seems to describe a truth that already exists, as if he is not creating meaning, but revealing the meaninglessness beneath all things. Every syllable feels like the sound of something unraveling. This is why his speech carries more terror than his strength. He does not persuade, he exposes. In a world defined by conversation, by friendship, by dialogue, by the endless chatter of beings who learn by speaking, the Lich's voice represents the corruption of that connection. Language in Ooo is the bridge between life forms, the way chaos organizes itself into understanding. The Lich uses that same bridge to carry silence across it. He turns words into contagion. What he says infects, hollowing out meaning until nothing remains but obedience to his purpose. When the Lich speaks, there is no persuasion, only revelation. He does not ask anyone to follow him. He tells them the truth of nothingness so completely that they cannot resist it. His voice works not because it is loud, but because it feels inevitable. He sounds like gravity, calm, steady, unavoidable. This is what makes him different from any other being in Ooo. He does not need to command. He speaks once, and the world moves toward ending, simply because it must. The calmness of his voice also makes him distinct from chaos. Golb, for instance, unravels, meaning through distortion and incomprehension. The Lich does so through perfect comprehension. His words are clear, but that clarity leads to despair. He speaks as if explaining something simple and absolute, that life is a mistake and death is the correction. This lucidity is what makes him monstrous. Chaos confuses. The Lich enlightens, but in that enlightenment, all light dies. Philosophically, the Lich's voice represents the moment when knowledge becomes destructive. Throughout Ooo, knowledge is treated as a kind of magic, Princess Bubblegum's science, the Enchiridian's wisdom, Bemo's logic. But the Lich's speech strips knowledge of purpose. He embodies a kind of anti-language, where knowing the truth means realizing that truth itself is futile. To understand him is to lose the ability to believe in anything else. Visually, when he speaks, the world often seems to dim. The air grows still, the colours desaturate, as if Ooo itself cannot bear to listen. His words are like a vacuum, drawing sound and motion inward until all that remains is his voice. This design choice mirrors his symbolic role, the erasure of everything that gives life texture. Even silence feels different after he has spoken, heavier, more permanent. What makes his voice so haunting is that it does not express emotion. There is no anger, joy, or satisfaction, only certainty. He speaks as one who has already won, because in a sense, he has. Time itself moves toward him. Every living thing will eventually prove him right. This inevitability gives his tone a calmness that others mistake for composure, but it is simply the serenity of inevitability. The Lich's relationship to speech also reveals something about power in Ooo. Most beings assert themselves through creation. They build, sing, invent, or shout. The Lich asserts himself through negation. When he speaks, he does not add to the world, but subtracts from it. His words do not fill space, they erase it. This is the inverse of creation's voice. Where others use language to build connection, the Lich uses it to make connection impossible. His silence, however, is just as powerful. The pauses between his words carry more weight than the words themselves. Silence for the Lich is not absence, it is presence. It is the space where meaning dies. After he speaks, the quiet that follows feels absolute, like a room after a candle has gone out. In that darkness, the listener's own thoughts turn against them, repeating his message until it becomes their own. The Lich does not need to shout, because his silence does the rest. In this way, the Lich turns communication into infection. To hear him is to risk contamination, because his language carries despair as a kind of logic. He speaks truths that cannot be refuted. All life ends, all creation decays, all meaning fades. These are not lies, and that is the horror of it. His evil lies not in deceit, but in the misuse of truth. He weaponizes the inevitabilities of the universe against those who still hope. This makes him a unique kind of villain. Most evil in Ooo can be debated, argued with, or transformed. The Lich cannot be reasoned out of existence because his logic is flawless. You cannot convince death to love life. His speech is the sound of the universe when it stops pretending that survival matters. In this sense, he represents the failure of dialogue itself, the end of conversation, the death of understanding. Yet, paradoxically, his voice also gives Ooo meaning. Each time he speaks, the heroes must answer. His words summon opposition, Finn's courage, Jake's loyalty, Bubblegum's intellect, all rise to meet the quiet certainty of his voice. Without his speech, there would be no response, no reason for the living to reaffirm life's value. The Lich's voice calls forth life precisely by threatening to erase it. In this way, even his anti-language becomes part of the world's ongoing dialogue. Ultimately, the Lich's voice is the sound of inevitability given form. It is the whisper that says, "This, too, shall end in a tone so calm it feels like mercy. But behind that calm lies hunger, not for power, but for completion. He speaks not to persuade, but to remind, not to destroy, but to conclude. In his voice, Ooo hears what every creature knows, but never says aloud. That silence is the final word. And so the Lich speaks rarely, not because he lacks things to say, but because he has already said everything. His purpose requires no elaboration, his truth no repetition. Each word he utters carries the weight of all that will vanish. His voice is not a weapon. It is the echo of the end itself. When he falls silent, the world breathes again. Sound returns, laughter stirs, life continues. But somewhere beneath it all, the echo of that voice remains, quiet, patient, waiting to finish the sentence that no one else dares to end. Desire drives nearly every being in Ooo. It is the rhythm of the world, creatures seeking, yearning, building, destroying. From Princess Bubblegum's endless urge to create and control, to Marceline's need for connection, to Jake's hunger for comfort and joy, Ooo is alive because it wants. Even its chaos, even its pain, comes from desire misdirected. But the Lich wants nothing. He is the absence of wanting, the negation of purpose born from feeling. This lack is what makes him absolute. He does not crave power, nor does he seek glory. He has no lust, no ambition, no curiosity. When he destroys, he does so not for pleasure, but for fulfillment. A fulfillment that is not emotional, but ontological. He does what he was made to do. His will is as mechanical as gravity, his purpose as simple as entropy, to end. In Ooo, where identity is often fluid and uncertain, the Lich's purity of intent makes him terrifying. Every other being in the world is defined by conflict within themselves. Finn doubts, Bubblegum reconsiders, Jake drifts, Marceline changes. Even cosmic entities, like Golb, act without clear comprehension. The Lich alone has no inner division. He is what he is, completely. There is no gap between thought and action, no hesitation between idea and execution. This unity gives him a kind of perfection, a monstrous perfection born of absence. To understand how this functions symbolically, imagine desire as the force that keeps Ooo alive. Every colour, every motion, every song comes from the friction of wanting and not having. The Lich erases that tension. In him, there is no wanting because there is nothing missing. His purpose is already complete within himself. He does not seek to become something. He already is everything he needs to be. This is why he never evolves, never changes form by choice. Change requires longing, and longing requires incompleteness. The Lich is complete in his emptiness. Philosophically, this makes him closer to a principle than a person. He is the physical manifestation of entropy's will, if such a thing can be said to have will at all. Where other monsters act from emotion, the Lich acts from inevitability. His lack of desire makes him impartial. He does not hate life. He merely negates it. He does not punish. He concludes. To the Lich, ending life is not an act of cruelty, but a fulfillment of balance. Everything that lives must die, and he is that process given consciousness. This neutrality is what makes his evil so insidious. Because he lacks passion, he cannot be moved. Because he lacks longing, he cannot be tempted. Because he lacks emotion, he cannot be swayed by pity or love. The heroes of Ooo thrive on emotion, on the power of friendship, compassion, and hope. These things cannot reach the Lich because they presuppose feeling. To love or fear him is to speak a language he does not understand. His stillness, his certainty, make him untouchable. There is something almost divine about this detachment. Many spiritual traditions describe enlightenment as the end of desire, the quieting of the self. In the Lich, that ideal has curdled into horror. He has achieved a kind of dark enlightenment, freedom from want, freedom from pain, freedom from self, but in that freedom lies destruction. He is what happens when peace is pursued to the point where nothing is left to disturb it. His serenity is the serenity of the grave. This purity of purpose also explains why the Lich never improvises. He does not plot in the way mortals do. He does not need to adjust his goals because they never change. His plans may take many forms, but they all move toward the same end. He is like a river that eventually finds the sea, no matter how many rocks divert it. His lack of desire makes him patient. Time cannot frustrate him. Failure cannot anger him. Delay cannot dissuade him. The Lich will always flow toward ending, because ending is all he knows. The Lich's emotional emptiness is mirrored in his physical form. There is nothing soft, nothing expressive, nothing alive about him. His eyes burn, but not with passion. His gestures are deliberate, but without flourish. He looks like a statue that learned to move, a corpse that remembered motion but forgot why. Every line of his body expresses function over feeling. This design is not just aesthetic, it is philosophical. The Lich's shape is stripped of excess, because excess belongs to life. If desire is the engine of creation, then the Lich's lack of desire is the engine of destruction. Creation begins with the question, what if? Destruction ends with the statement, enough. The Lich embodies that final declaration. He does not wonder, imagine, or dream. Those are acts of the living. He fulfills the world's exhaustion. When he arrives, there is no more struggle, no more reaching, only the completion of stillness. Yet his lack of desire also isolates him. In a strange way, the Lich's perfection condemns him to loneliness. Connection requires exchange, the movement of feeling between two beings. Without desire, there can be no empathy, no recognition of another. The Lich cannot share his purpose, because sharing is itself a form of creation. His existence is solitary by definition. Even his influence on others, the way he corrupts or controls, is not true companionship. It is absorption, the folding of difference into sameness. Those he touches stop being themselves. They become extensions of his will. This isolation gives his presence a certain sadness. Though not one, he feels himself. The sadness is ours, the audience's, the world's, when faced with the idea of existence without feeling. The Lich represents the nightmare of peace without love, of purpose without joy. He shows what happens when the universe achieves its goal and finds that the goal was silence. In this way, his emptiness reflects our deepest fear, that meaning itself may be a temporary illusion, and the end might be nothing at all. And yet, this void gives his role purpose. In his lack of desire, he becomes the opposite of everything Ooo stands for. Where Ooo is colourful, he is colourless. Where Ooo is noisy, he is quiet. Where Ooo is full of yearning, he is beyond want. This contrast defines both sides. Life's beauty depends on the possibility of its absence. The Lich's emptiness makes desire meaningful. Without him, longing would have no edge, no urgency. Without his stillness, movement would feel aimless. In the end, the Lich's absence of desire is his essence. It is not a flaw to be overcome. not a trait to be redeemed. It is what he is and what the world needs him to be, because as long as something in Ooo can feel, dream, and change, it will move away from him. He gives life its direction simply by existing as the destination it resists. So the Lich does not want the end, because wanting implies separation. He is the end. His purpose is not fueled by passion, but by being. His calmness is not control, it is completion. And that is what makes him the purest monster of all. Not hatred, not rage, but perfection without desire. The Lich always comes back. Sometimes he is shattered, sometimes sealed, sometimes transformed, but never gone. His return is not a surprise, it is a certainty. No matter how many times the world rebuilds, no matter how thoroughly he is defeated, the Lich finds a way to rise again. This repetition is not a failure of finality, it is the point. The Lich's existence is not about victory or defeat, but about persistence. The way death lingers, even in life's brightest corners. In Ooo, everything changes. Kingdoms rise and fall. Relationships shift. Even the sky seems to rewrite itself over time. But the Lich remains constant. He does not age, adapt, or evolve. He is the same every time he returns, unchanged by what the world has learned in his absence. This constancy is part of his horror. While every other being struggles, grows, and falters, the Lich simply endures. He is not subject to time because he is what time leads toward, the quiet, inevitable end. Symbolically, his return represents death's persistence within life. Even when the heroes win, their victory is temporary, because life itself is temporary. The Lich embodies the truth that every ending waits patiently behind every beginning. When he returns, it is not because of some failure of the living, but because the cycle of living requires him. He is not an invader from outside the circle. He is the circle's conclusion. The Lich's defeats are not erasures, but pauses, breaths between heartbeats. Each return of the Lich feels like the universe remembering itself. His reappearance is less resurrection and more revelation. He never left, not truly. He simply waited for the right silence to step through. The world forgets, but he remembers. He is the continuity that connects every era of Ooo, the thread of ending woven through each new beginning. His persistence gives Oo's optimism its meaning, because without his shadow, hope would not need to shine so brightly. This repetition also reflects a deeper truth about evil in Adventure Time. Evil, like entropy, cannot be destroyed, only transformed, delayed, or redirected. When the Lich is trapped or subdued, he changes shape but not essence. His spirit leaks into soil, into air, into the hearts of those who have seen him. He spreads not through force, but through memory. Once known, he cannot be forgotten. His presence is viral, not because he moves, but because he lingers. Philosophically, the Lich's return reveals that endings are not singular events, but ongoing conditions. Every story has more than one ending, because endings ripple outward. The Lich embodies this ripple. Each time he re-emerges, it is not to repeat the same act, but to remind the world that no conclusion is complete. His return is the echo of finality, returning until the living truly understand what it means to end. There is also a psychological layer to this persistence. For the heroes, the Lich's return represents the impossibility of total safety. Even after peace is restored, the memory of him haunts them. This mirrors how trauma works, how the fear of destruction outlives the destruction itself. The Lich is the world's trauma-given form. His reappearance is not the start of new evil, but the resurfacing of old memory. He is what remains unresolved in Oo's history, always resurfacing until understood. Visually, the Lich's returns often coincide with quiet moments. He rarely bursts back into the world through spectacle. Instead, he seeps. A crack in a seal, a whisper in the dark, a faint glow where none should be. This slow, creeping re-emergence mirrors the way fear returns in life, not as sudden terror, but as the slow realization that something thought gone has always been there. The Lich's persistence also reflects the limits of victory. In Ooo, triumph is never absolute. Every defeat carries its opposite within it, just as every end carries the seed of continuation. The Lich proves that the world cannot be saved once and for all, because to exist is to remain vulnerable to ending. The living can only postpone, never eliminate, the inevitability he represents. His survival is a metaphysical truth. You cannot destroy the concept of death without destroying life along with it. This makes his return necessary, not accidental. Without the Lich, Ooo would drift into complacency. His shadow keeps life moving, keeps heroes vigilant, keeps creation meaningful. He is not only death's embodiment, but also life's motivator. Each time he rises, the living must prove again that existence is worth defending. Each confrontation with him is a reaffirmation of that truth. In mythic terms, the Lich fills the role of the eternal adversary, the being who cannot be destroyed because he is part of the universe's structure. Many stories have such figures. The serpent that encircles the world, the darkness that waits beyond the stars, the god who sleeps but never dies. The Lich is Oo's version of that myth. His immortality is not magical but conceptual. He cannot end because he is ending. This understanding reframes his defeats as acts of balance rather than victory. When Finn or others stop him, they are not erasing him from existence. They are reasserting life's claim to the present. Their triumph is not permanent, but it is enough. It buys time. It allows joy. It keeps the world breathing a little longer. The Lich will return, but so will resistance. The two are locked in perpetual dialogue, one defining the other. And perhaps that is the Lich's truest purpose, to return. His persistence is his meaning. Without recurrence, death would be meaningless. A single event, easily forgotten. By returning, the Lich ensures that endings remain visible, that mortality remains felt. He turns death into a teacher, an ever-present lesson that reminds the living to cherish their impermanence. The Lich does not return because he fails to die. He returns because death itself cannot die. He is the breath between moments, the shadow behind every sunrise, the silence after every song. To destroy him completely would be to destroy the rhythm of existence itself. And so he persists, patient as the grave, certain as the tide. In the end, the Lich's inevitability is not despairing, it is honest. He does not lie about what the universe is. A cycle of creation and decay, birth and extinction, motion and rest. His endless return is not a curse but a truth, one the heroes must live with, and one that gives their lives meaning. For every time the Lich returns, so too does the choice to live, to love, to rebuild. The end comes again, and every time life rises to meet it. The Lich is not only the destroyer of Ooo, he is its reflection. He mirrors everything the world has ever been, and everything it fears to become. In a land full of colour, laughter, and chaos, the Lich stands as the silent, perfect opposite. But mirrors do not only reflect opposites, they also reveal what is hidden. In this way, the Lich shows Ooo, the truth it prefers to forget, that beneath all the noise and wonder lies the memory of nothingness. When we look at the Lich, we are seeing Ooo inverted, a world stripped of whimsy, drained of colour, stilled of movement. His existence is what the world would look like if its energy were to stop vibrating. Every character, every creature, every kingdom in Ooo defines itself through desire and expression. The Lich's very lack of these things throws the rest of the world into focus. His nothingness reveals how much everything else depends on wanting, speaking, and moving. This makes the Lich a kind of cosmic mirror, reflecting the structure of Ooo back upon itself. When Princess Bubblegum builds, he unbuilds. When Marceline sings, he silences. When Finn grows, the Lich waits for the growth to end. He is not a contradiction of life, but its completion, the end point implicit in every beginning. In that sense, he reflects not what is wrong with Ooo, but what makes it possible. Without him, there would be no contrast, no reason for the living to know they are alive. But this mirror also reveals Oo's guilt. The Lich's existence exposes the violence and destruction buried under its candy-coloured surface. The Mushroom War, the centuries of rebuilding, the endless experiments of bubblegum, all these are acts of both creation and harm. Oo's beauty was born from ruin, its peace built on ancient catastrophe. The Lich is that catastrophe personified. He is the wound that never healed, walking among the descendants of those who caused it. When he speaks, he does not merely threaten the world. He reminds it of what it already did to itself. This is why his presence always feels personal. He does not simply destroy kingdoms or heroes. He unmasks them. He forces them to confront the darker parts of their own nature, the ambition, fear, and arrogance that shaped Oo's history. In this way, he is not just the enemy of life, but the embodiment of its consequences. His destruction is always poetic, always tied to the flaws of those who resist him. He shows each of them what happens when their desires are carried to their logical ends. Finn's heroism is brave, but it carries the temptation of self-righteousness, the idea that violence can solve all problems. The Lich mirrors that belief, showing what happens when destruction is justified completely. Bubblegum's intellect is vast, but it borders on control, on the belief that the world must be organized perfectly to survive. The Lich mirrors that order, but to its extreme. A universe so orderly that nothing moves at all. Even Marceline, with her hunger for connection and her long life, finds her reflection in the Lich's emptiness. He is eternity without companionship, immortality without memory. In each case, the Lich reflects not the opposite of a virtue, but its perfection taken too far. Courage without doubt becomes cruelty. Order without compassion becomes tyranny. Immortality without meaning becomes despair. The Lich shows Ooo that monstrosity is not the failure of good, but the point at which good forgets to stop. He is the end state of every idea taken to its final form. Visually, this mirror quality is encoded in his design. His face resembles a skull, the shape every living face will one day take. His glowing eyes reflect light but emit none, like the eyes of a mirror that does not give anything back. Even his posture is reflective, rigid, symmetrical, as if designed to echo the viewer's gaze. He looks less like a creature and more like a projection, the world's own death staring back at it. Thematically, this mirror also extends to the structure of Ooo itself. The land is full of ruins and rebirths, castles built on cities, forests grown over machines, candy kingdoms thriving beside radioactive deserts. Every act of creation here is also an act of forgetting. The Lich stands, as the memory that cannot be erased. His persistence forces Ooo to see that it can never completely cover the scars of the past. He is the history the world tries to bury, returning again and again to be acknowledged. There is also a deeper philosophical layer to this reflection. The Lich's emptiness mirrors the void at the centre of all existence, the silence between thoughts, the stillness between moments, the nothingness that surrounds every act of being. Ooo, for all its noise and colour, floats within that silence. The Lich is that silence given shape. He reminds the world that all movement occurs within stillness, all meaning within meaninglessness. His role is to hold up that truth until others learn to see it without turning away. Yet paradoxically, by embodying nothingness, the Lich gives everything else significance. Without his void, Oo's abundance would be meaningless. It is because he exists, because death and erasure exist, that life feels precious. In the same way that darkness makes light visible, the Lich's nothingness allows Oo's everythingness to matter. The mirror of annihilation reflects the beauty of survival. This paradox defines the relationship between Ooo and its monsters, but especially between Ooo and the Lich. The world is not at war with him, it is in dialogue. Every act of life answers his silence. Every heartbeat contradicts his stillness. He does not truly seek to win, because winning would erase his reason for being. The Lich's perfection requires imperfection to contrast it. Without life to end, he has no function. Without desire to extinguish, he has no shape. He and Ooo define each other. In this way, the Lich's purpose is reflective rather than aggressive. He is not chasing the world, he is showing it what it is. His destruction is a mirror the world must look into, again and again, each time recognizing a little more of itself in his hollow eyes. The horror lies not in what he wants to do, but in what he reveals, that everything we love will end, that everything built will fall, that even laughter echoes into silence. And yet, in the reflection, there is also peace. To see the Lich clearly is to understand the balance that sustains Ooo. Life and death are not enemies, but mirrors, facing each other across time. Every act of creation is meaningful precisely because it cannot last. The Lich's nothingness makes beauty possible. His silence makes music necessary. His stillness gives motion value. The Lich does not destroy meaning, he defines it by contrast. He does not erase Ooo, he reflects it. And in that reflection, the world learns to see itself not as a mistake waiting to end, but as a fragile, luminous defiance of the inevitable. Among all the forces that haunt the Land of Ooo, two stand above the rest, the Lich and Golb. Both represent endings, both bring silence, both erase meaning, but they are not the same. If the Lich is death given intent, Golb is the universe's indifference made flesh. One is destruction that knows what it wants. The other is destruction that does not need to want at all. Their relationship defines the philosophical limits of Ooo, the point where meaning and chaos meet, and beyond which nothing can be understood. The Lich is often called pure evil, but that description misses something essential. Evil implies morality, choice, and corruption, the twisting of good into something dark. The Lich transcends all that. He does not rebel against goodness because he exists beyond it. He is the logical conclusion of existence. If things can be created, they must also be destroyed. His purpose is sharp and clear, the end of all life. Golb, on the other hand, has no purpose. It does not aim to destroy, yet its presence unravels everything. It is chaos without intention, entropy without consciousness. This difference gives their coexistence meaning. The Lich represents structured nihilism, the belief that ending is not just inevitable but correct. He sees destruction as order, the ultimate resolution of the universe's noise. Golb represents formless nihilism, not belief, not order, but the absence of all distinction. The Lich seeks a world of silence. Golb brings a world where silence and sound are the same. In one, nothing survives. In the other, nothing even exists to be lost. To understand this contrast, imagine a candle. The Lich is the wind that blows it out. Golb is the void where flame and air never were. The Lich ends life. Golb dissolves reality. The difference is subtle but crucial. The Lich still recognizes the existence of what he destroys. His very purpose depends on it. Golb does not destroy things because, in Golb's presence, there are no things left to destroy. Identity, shape, time, and thought collapse. The Lich annihilates form. Golb annihilates form's meaning. Visually, these two entities express their natures in opposite ways. The Lich's design is sharp and skeletal, every line defined, every edge clear. He is precision, the shape of death distilled to its essence. Golb, by contrast, is shapeless. Its body flickers and shifts, impossible to categorize. Where the Lich embodies clarity, Golb embodies confusion. One is the perfection of definition, the other end of definition. Philosophically, their difference reflects two aspects of fear. The Lich represents fear of death, the end we can imagine. Golb represents fear of meaninglessness, the end we cannot imagine. The Lich horror is intimate, the stillness of a body, the fading of a heartbeat. Golb's horror is cosmic, the erasure of the idea of a body, the disappearance of heartbeat and silence alike. In this way, they divide the spectrum of dread, the personal and the infinite. In the mythology of Ooo, the Lich often feels like a priest of Golb, a servant of a higher void. Yet his worship is not devotion, it is alignment. The Lich's clarity complements Golb's chaos. He is the thought before unthinking, the will before willlessness. Where Golb erases everything without distinction, the Lich organizes destruction. He brings order to ending, guiding it like a sculptor finishing a piece of art. If Golb is oblivion, the Lich is the ritual that precedes it, the ceremony of the end. This connection is crucial because it defines the metaphysical hierarchy of Ooo. The Lich operates within existence. Golb operates beyond it. The Lich can be resisted, trapped, even transformed, because he shares a language with life. His intent can be opposed with equal intent. Golb cannot be opposed because opposition requires difference, and in Golb, difference ceases to exist. The Lich is terrifying because he wants to destroy you. Golb is terrifying because before it there is no you to destroy. The heroes of Ooo, especially Finn, stand between these two forces. The Lich challenges him to defend life. Golb challenges him to understand what life even means. In resisting the Lich, Finn asserts will. In facing Golb, he faces the limits of will itself. Together, these encounters show that existence requires both boundaries, purpose and mystery, order and chaos. Without the Lich, life would forget to fight. Without Golb, life would forget to question. Symbolically, the relationship between the two beings also reflects the dual nature of endings in Ooo. Some endings are comprehensible, a life lived, a story finished, a candle burned out. Others are incomprehensible, the collapse of meaning, the unmaking of thought, the end that cannot be narrated. The Lich and Golb embody these two kinds of finality. The Lich says, "This is the end, and here is how it happens." Golb says nothing at all. And yet, despite their shared nature, they cannot merge. The Lich's existence depends on distinction, life and death, beginning and end. Golb erases distinction. Were the Lich ever to succeed completely, to bring about total nothingness, he too would vanish into Golb's chaos. His purpose would dissolve into purposelessness. In this sense, Golb is both his god and his doom. The Lich can never fully achieve his goal, because in achieving it, he would cease to exist as the Lich. He is eternally trapped between being and non-being, an agent of nothingness who must remain something to serve it. Visually and narratively, this tension appears in their encounters. The Lich's presence is cold but comprehensible, deathly still but structured. Golb's presence, however, breaks the frame. Colours distort, space folds, language disintegrates. When Golb appears, even the Lich's calm logic seems fragile. His certainty looks small next to the infinite. He becomes, in those moments, what he truly is. A child of the void, not its master. This relationship also reveals something about Oo's resilience. For all their power, neither Golb nor the Lich can truly win. The Lich depends on life to define him, and Golb's formlessness can never be sustained within the structured world. Life persists because the universe needs contrast to exist. The Lich's failure to end everything is not a mistake. It is the balance reasserting itself. Even oblivion requires something to vanish. Ultimately, the Lich and Golb are two mirrors facing each other, one showing structure collapsing into chaos, the other chaos giving birth to structure. Between them lies Ooo, vibrating with meaning and meaninglessness, creation and decay. They are not opposites, but continuations, each proving the other's necessity. If the Lich is death's whisper, Golb is silence itself. The Lich speaks of endings we can understand. Golb embodies the end beyond understanding. The Lich has purpose. Golb has none. Yet together they complete the circle, intention dissolving into indifference, meaning fading into the vast quiet that waits beyond all stories. And so, when we speak of the Lich's purpose, we must remember that even purpose has its limit. Beyond him lies Golb, the point where purpose evaporates, where the will to end meets the unthinking infinite. The Lich strives for silence. Golb is silence. And between the two, life flickers, fragile and defiant, insisting on meaning for as long as it can. To speak of the Lich is to speak of death, but in Ooo, death is not the opposite of life, it is what defines it. Every heartbeat, every act of creation, every fragile moment of joy draws its meaning from the fact that it can end. Without the Lich, there would still be laughter, but no urgency to it. There would still be love, but no preciousness. He gives contour to life by threatening it, and in that paradox lies his most profound purpose. From his first appearance to his last echo, the Lich's shadow falls across every living thing. He does not need to touch them directly to affect them. The very knowledge of him, the fact that he exists, changes the way the inhabitants of Ooo live. He turns every sunrise into a fragile miracle, every act of kindness into defiance. His presence infuses life with significance precisely because he could take it away. Finn's courage, Jake's loyalty, Princess Bubblegum's inventions, Marceline's music, all find deeper resonance because of him. Without the Lich's stillness, there would be no movement worth noting. Without his silence, there would be no song that mattered. He creates meaning by threatening to erase it. His annihilation is the measure against which life defines itself. Symbolically, the Lich functions as the outline around the painting. He does not add colour, but he gives the image form. Without boundaries, even the brightest hues blur into chaos. Life's energy in Ooo is wild, creative, and restless, but it needs death to give it direction. The Lich is that boundary, the frame that holds creation together by reminding it where it ends. In philosophical terms, this makes the Lich an existential figure. He represents the awareness of mortality that underlies every conscious act. To live meaningfully is to live with the knowledge of death. Most beings avoid this truth. They fill their days with distractions, laughter, and routine. But the Lich never forgets. He is the awareness of death made visible, and by facing him, the heroes and the audience are forced to acknowledge the same truth, that life's beauty is inseparable from its impermanence. This is why the Lich cannot be removed from Oo's story without unmaking it. He is the gravitational centre around which everything else orbits. Without him, the world would drift into endless motion, unanchored by consequence. His threat keeps the story grounded in reality, even as magic and absurdity swirl around it. He is the one thing that reminds Ooo and us that everything, no matter how strange or joyful, must end. Visually, this paradox appears in how the Lich interacts with light and colour. Wherever he goes, brightness fades. His presence drains warmth from the air. And yet, when he disappears, those same colours return brighter than before. The contrast he creates makes the world shine. His darkness teaches Ooo to see its own light. The more he threatens life, the more vibrantly life responds. This tension between the Lich and life is not hostility alone, it is dependence. Life needs death to feel alive, and death needs life to be meaningful. The Lich exists because life exists. His purpose has no value without something to end. Every time Ooo grows, he grows too, like a shadow stretching behind it. This connection is not moral or emotional, but structural. The two cannot be separated without collapsing the universe's balance. In this way, the Lich also becomes a teacher. Though he does not intend to, he teaches the living what it means to live well. His inevitability makes their choices urgent. His silence makes their voices necessary. His permanence makes their impermanence precious. Finn learns courage because the Lich exists. Jake learns restraint because the Lich's unrestrained purpose shows the danger of excess. Princess Bubblegum learns compassion because her control mirrors his lifeless order. Even Marceline, who has seen centuries of endings, learns to treasure connection because of what the Lich reminds her she could lose. The Lich's relationship to life mirrors the rhythm of breath. Each inhale carries the seed of exhale. Life pushes outward, death pulls inward, and together they sustain the cycle. To live fully is not to deny death, but to breathe with it, to accept its rhythm without letting it consume. Oo's joy does not ignore the Lich. It sings over him, not to drown him out, but to harmonize with his silence. This paradoxical harmony gives Adventure Time its emotional weight. The show's lightness is inseparable from its darkness. Every candy-coloured moment of silliness carries an undercurrent of melancholy, because the Lich's shadow always lingers. He is the reason the laughter feels real, the reason the friendships feel necessary. Without him, Oo's happiness would feel empty, too perfect, too infinite to matter. The Lich gives the story gravity. Philosophically, the Lich's relationship to life touches on the idea that endings are not enemies of meaning, but conditions of it. A song that never ends ceases to be music. A story that never finishes stops being a story. The Lich embodies that truth. He is the period at the end of the sentence, the silence that makes the next note possible. He is not opposed to creation, he completes it. This is why, even in his most terrifying moments, there is a strange sense of peace in the Lich's presence. His calm, his stillness, his certainty, all of it reflects a truth life cannot deny. He does not hate existence, he fulfills it. The fear he inspires comes from recognition, not opposition. Somewhere deep inside, every living thing understands what he represents. And yet, for all his inevitability, life resists him. Not because it can win, but because resistance itself is what makes life alive. Every time Finn stands against him, every time Jake cracks a joke in the face of doom, every time Marceline sings into the darkness, life asserts its defiance. The Lich does not silence. Dem, he gives them something to sing against. In opposing him, they find purpose. The Lich's stillness and life's motion form a perfect equilibrium. He moves only when life does, speaks only when meaning becomes too loud. He is the balancing weight on the scale, ensuring that creation does not spin out of control. Oo's vitality depends on his presence as its counterpoint. In that way, he is not an intruder, but an integral part of the world's design. Ultimately, the Lich's purpose is not to destroy life, but to complete it. He is the closing of the circle, the reminder that everything returns to stillness. Life's meaning comes from knowing it will end, and the Lich is that knowing given form. His shadow does not erase the light, it defines its edge. In the quiet between his appearances, when Ooo celebrates another dawn, his essence lingers, not as terror, but as truth. The truth that to live is to face the end, and to face the end is to understand life. The Lich's existence gives life urgency, beauty, and weight. Without him, Ooo would lose the contrast that makes it shine. The Lich is death, but in death, life finds its purpose. The Lich's power does not lie in armies or explosions. His weapon is subtler, quieter, and far more enduring. The Lich spreads not through conquest, but through contagion, the slow, invisible transmission of despair. To see him is to remember death. To hear him is to doubt life. He infects not bodies, but certainty. The Lich does not need to destroy the world with force. He only needs to convince it that destruction is inevitable. Once that seed is planted, the world begins to end on its own. Every act of corruption in Ooo, every spell gone wrong, every creation that rebels against its maker, carries a whisper of the Lich. He is not always present, but his logic is. It begins as a thought. What if nothing matters? From there, everything unravels. Kingdoms lose purpose, heroes lose faith, and the delicate balance between joy and fear collapses inward. That is the Lich's truest contagion, the spread of meaninglessness. Symbolically, this form of evil mirrors the way despair works in real life. Destruction rarely begins with explosions. It begins with resignation. The Lich embodies that resignation in its purest form, the acceptance of annihilation as natural, even righteous. His influence infects through thought, through awareness, through the quiet acknowledgement that all things will end. Once that truth hardens into hopelessness, he has already won. In the mythology of Ooo, corruption often takes many shapes. Sometimes it is physical, the earth cracking, colours fading, plants dying where he walks. Other times, it is mental, friends turning on each other, courage turning to fear. The Lich's touch transforms what it encounters, but never simply into ash. Instead, He reshapes things into his own likeness, cold, empty, driven by the will to end. What he cannot destroy, he converts. What he cannot convert, he waits for. The heroes who face him experience this infection differently. Finn feels it as doubt, a weakening of his resolve to fight, a creeping fear that his courage might be meaningless. Princess Bubblegum feels it as control, the desperate urge to fix everything before it breaks, an unconscious imitation of the Lich's obsession with perfection through stillness. Marceline feels it as fatigue, the exhaustion of endless survival, the temptation to stop caring. The Lich's contagion takes whatever is strongest in someone and bends it until it fractures. Visually, his corruption is portrayed as stillness spreading outward. When he touches something, it stops moving. Plants turn black and brittle. Water freezes in mid-flow. Even light seems to pause. The world begins to resemble him, motionless, lifeless, exact. This visual decay reflects his symbolic infection, the transformation of living chaos into perfect, unfeeling order. It is not destruction by explosion, but by stillness. Philosophically, the Lich's corruption represents the death of curiosity. To live is to ask questions, to wonder what comes next. The Lich answers every question with the same word, nothing. His infection is intellectual as much as spiritual, the end of thought itself. Once his logic takes hold, there is no reason to create, to love, or to hope. This is why he does not need to fight constantly. The Lich knows that once despair takes root, it grows on its own. This form of contagion mirrors how stories themselves carry meaning. In Ooo, every tale of heroism, friendship, and love is a story told against the Lich's truth. When those stories stop being told, when laughter fades and courage falters, his influence spreads. He feeds on silence, not the peaceful silence of rest, but the silence of surrender. The less the living believe in life, the more powerful he becomes. What makes this corruption especially terrifying is its subtlety. The Lich never argues, never debates. He lets the world convince itself. His existence is proof enough of his philosophy. You cannot refute him because his presence confirms his truth. Endings are real, death exists, nothing lasts. Every attempt to deny him sounds naive in comparison. The Lich does not conquer hearts. He lets them give up. Yet, in this very corruption lies his limitation. The same knowledge that makes him powerful also creates resistance. The heroes of Ooo do not fight the Lich by denying death. They fight by affirming life despite it. Finn's courage is not ignorance, it is defiance. Bubblegum's rebuilding is not control, it is faith. Marceline's music is not denial, it is remembrance. They are infected by the same truth, but they respond differently. The Lich sees the end and stops. They see the end and sing. This is why his contagion can never fully consume the world. His philosophy spreads, but it never completes itself. Even those who falter under his influence eventually awaken to the absurd beauty of resistance. Oo's strength lies not in purity, but in persistence. The people of Ooo know they will die, and yet they keep living. The Lich's infection teaches them the futility of life, but that futility becomes the very reason to cherish it. Symbolically, his corruption functions like a mirror held to existence itself. He reveals what is always true, that everything decays, that nothing lasts. The difference lies in interpretation. For him, that truth is an ending. For the living, it is a call to action. The same realization that drives him to stillness drives others to motion. The contagion spreads both despair and purpose, depending on the heart it touches. This is perhaps the Lich's greatest irony. His influence strengthens the world he seeks to destroy. Every time he spreads his despair, someone finds new meaning in the face of it. Every time he turns joy into stillness, another being rediscovers joy's value. The Lich infects Ooo with the knowledge of death, and Ooo transforms that infection into vitality. His corruption becomes creation's fuel. The Lich's purpose, then, is not to end the world through destruction, but to test its will to live. His contagion reveals who, in Ooo, can bear to look at the void and still move forward. It separates resignation from resilience, despair from defiance. In spreading himself, he spreads awareness, the awareness that meaning must be made, not given. In the end, the Lich's corruption does not diminish life, it refines it. His contagion does not erase meaning, it forces meaning to defend itself. Every hero touched by his influence emerges more self-aware, more grounded in the truth that nothing lasts, and that nothing lasting is needed. The Lich's infection becomes the world's immunity. He spreads silence, and the world learns to sing louder. He spreads despair, and the world learns to love harder. His stillness moves the world to motion. His corruption becomes creation's test, and every time, Ooo passes. The Lich's contagion, like death itself, cannot be escaped, but it can be answered, not with denial, but with life. Everything in Ooo moves, sometimes forward, sometimes backward, sometimes in strange loops that defy understanding. Time there feels soft, elastic, playful. Heroes grow up, kingdoms crumble and rebuild, memories bend and fold upon themselves. But beneath that playfulness, a shadow moves in one direction only. It does not stretch, it does not twist, it simply falls. That shadow is the Lich, the weight of time's end, the slow, patient reminder that all motion eventually stops. If life is the rhythm of time in motion, the Lich is its silence. He is what time becomes when it forgets to flow. His stillness mirrors the moment after a heartbeat, the pause before decay begins. In that pause, everything that was alive continues to exist in form, but not in spirit. This is the space the Lich inhabits, the gap between movement and memory. He does not rush to destroy, he waits, because he knows that time itself will finish what he began. In this way, the Lich is not merely death's embodiment, but time's completion. He represents the final state of every process, the inevitable point at which energy runs out, at which motion no longer feeds itself. The living world sees him as an intruder, but he is simply what happens when enough moments pass. He is the shadow cast by time's arrow. Every second that moves forward pulls him closer. Every sunrise stretches his silhouette a little farther across the land. This makes him the quietest of cosmic truths. The Lich never needs to hurry, because he and time are the same thing seen from different sides. Time builds, he unbuilds. Time creates distance, he collapses it. Time tells stories, he closes them. The heroes of Ooo move through time, trying to create meaning before the Lich catches up, but he is never far behind, not chasing, merely following the steady echo of their motion. Visually, the Lich's connection to time is captured in the way he seems ancient yet unchanging. His body shows the marks of decay, bones, cracks, dust, but those marks never deepen. He does not age, he exists at the end of aging. He is what remains after time has finished its work. This paradox makes him both timeless and timely. He is always arriving, always already there, the end waiting at the conclusion of every timeline. Philosophically, the Lich reveals the nature of time's cruelty. Time does not kill out of malice, it kills by existing. Every moment lived is a moment lost. The Lich embodies that law without pretense. His calmness mirrors the impartiality of decay. He does not judge, he only completes. In his stillness, we see what time would look like if it stopped pretending to be motion. And yet, the Lich's connection to time also reveals something hopeful. If he is the shadow of time, then his presence proves that time is still moving. Shadows cannot exist without light. Every time he rises, the world must still be alive enough to cast him. His existence depends on life continuing, even as he moves to end it. The longer he waits, the more his waiting proves that time, though doomed, still flows. This paradox defines his relationship with the heroes. Finn runs, fights, grows older. Jake drifts through the years, stretching and changing shape. Princess Bubblegum builds and rebuilds, trying to outpace decay with invention. The Lich watches them all. He does not interfere constantly because he doesn't need to. Time will bring them to him eventually. Their urgency gives meaning to his patience. In this sense, the Lich's presence in Ooo is both a threat and a mercy. He shows that time's forward motion has an end, but also that the end gives time direction. Without death, time would be meaningless repetition. Without the Lich, the passing of days would be an endless blur. He ensures that time remains sacred by reminding the living that it is limited. Each moment matters precisely because there will be a last one. Symbolically, he is the quiet voice at the end of every story, whispering that the tale must close. He is the slow fading of a campfire after the last song, the hush after laughter ends, the peace after struggle. These are not moments of despair, they are moments of completion. The Lich's time is not only destruction, it is resolution. In his stillness, endings find their dignity. But his shadow also warns of stagnation. When life tries too hard to stop time, to freeze, to perfect, to control, it begins to resemble him. Princess Bubblegum's quest for eternal order mirrors his stillness. The frozen wastes of Ice King's kingdom mirror his cold permanence. The hero's temptation to preserve every victory mirrors his denial of motion. The Lich teaches that to live is not to resist time, but to move with it, to let endings arrive when they must. His relationship to time also explains his patience. Unlike mortals, he has no need to rush, because he experiences no difference between now and forever. To him, all moments already contain their endings. What we see as a battle or a struggle is, to the Lich, simply the unfolding of what must occur. His serenity comes from knowing that the outcome is written in time's structure. He does not fight, he waits for time to deliver what it owes him. In the mythology of Ooo, the Lich's endurance becomes a constant reminder that decay is part of creation's rhythm. The land's bright kingdoms and strange beings are temporary arrangements of energy. Over time, they will collapse, return to dust, and perhaps take new forms. The Lich is the agent of that recycling, not evil, but inevitable. He is not outside time, he is its conclusion. His presence ensures that time's motion has consequence. Visually, this is why the Lich's appearances often coincide with ruins, with places where time has already done its work. He belongs among fallen towers and crumbling halls, because he is what those places are becoming. The ruins are not his victims, they are his reflection. He is the still point at the end of every structure, the silence after every echo. And yet, through all this decay, Ooo continues to move. Life persists, defying him not by ignoring time, but by embracing it. Flowers bloom knowing they will wilt. Friends laugh knowing their laughter will fade. This is the rhythm the Lich gives the world, a steady heartbeat of creation and conclusion. Without his shadow, time would have no texture. His stillness defines its flow. Ultimately, the Lich, as time's shadow, reminds us that endings are not interruptions, but integral to the rhythm of existence. Time is a river, and the Lich is the sea waiting at its mouth. The river does not resist the sea, it flows toward it because it must. And yet, along the way, it glitters in sunlight, carves valleys, nourishes life. The Lich's inevitability makes that journey meaningful. Without him, there would be no arrival, only endless drifting. So the Lich waits, not as an enemy, but as the patient shadow of every ticking moment. He is not chasing the living, they are walking toward him, as all living things do. And when they arrive, he will not rage or gloat. He will simply open his hands and complete what time began. Because the Lich is not the end of time, he is time, seen from the other side of motion. In Ooo, heroes are not born from peace, they are born from threat. Courage has meaning only when there is something to fear, and goodness has weight only when evil exists to test it. The Lich is that test. He is the measure against which every act of heroism in the Land of Ooo defines itself. Without him, the idea of the hero would dissolve, because there would be nothing left to resist. Finn's entire journey, from boyhood to the quiet wisdom he eventually finds, unfolds in the shadow of the Lich. Even when the Lich is not present, Finn's choices, his compassion, his impulsiveness, his bravery, are shaped by the knowledge that somewhere in the world there exists a being that wants everything to end. The Lich does not simply challenge heroes through battle, he defines the need for them to exist. The Lich embodies absolute certainty, and heroes are born from doubt. He knows his purpose, they must discover theirs. Every confrontation between them is not just a fight between life and death, but between knowing and seeking. The Lich's stillness forces movement. His perfection forces growth. Heroes in Ooo do not simply oppose him, they become themselves by doing so. Philosophically, this relationship reflects an ancient truth of storytelling. The hero and the monster are reflections of each other. The monster reveals what the hero is capable of, both for good and for ill. In Finn's case, the Lich exposes what happens when strength is stripped of empathy. Finn learns that heroism is not about destruction, but about preservation, about creating rather than ending. Without the Lich, he might never have learned that distinction. The Lich also defines what goodness means in Ooo by embodying its absence. Goodness in this world is not purity or perfection. It is persistence. It is the act of continuing to care, to try, to create meaning in a universe that will one day forget you. The Lich's presence transforms goodness from an abstract virtue into an act of resistance. To be kind in a world where the Lich exists is to defy inevitability. Every joke Jake tells, every song Marceline sings, every invention Bubblegum builds becomes an act of rebellion against his stillness. This dynamic extends beyond individuals. The entire structure of Ooo, its kingdoms, its fragile peace, its bursts of joy, can be seen as a response to the Lich's existence. The Candy Kingdom's sweetness, the Flame Kingdom's heat, the Ice Kingdom's cold loneliness, each embodies a different way of living with death. They are not simply kingdoms, they are philosophies, each exploring how to live meaningfully while knowing the end is certain. The Lich does not destroy these worlds, he gives them context. Visually, this balance between hero and Lich appears in the way Oo's world contrasts light and dark. The Lich shadow is long, but it never covers everything. Even in his darkest moments, there is colour at the edges of the frame. a sign that life endures, that defiance remains. Each time the Lich returns, Ooo brightens after him, as if the land itself remembers what it is supposed to protect. His very presence refreshes the world's memory of why it wants to live. The relationship between hero and Lich is also psychological. Heroes need purpose, and the Lich provides it. He gives shape to their courage by showing them what it means to face something truly immovable. Most villains in Ooo can be reasoned with, redeemed, or at least understood. The Lich cannot. His perfection forces the heroes to confront the limits of compassion. They must learn that goodness is not always about fixing everything. Sometimes it is about standing firm in the face of what cannot be changed. This dynamic creates a balance that is almost symbiotic. The Lich's continued existence ensures that heroes must continue to act, to evolve, to care, and their continued existence ensures that he can never fully win. Together, they create the heartbeat of the universe, contraction and expansion, despair and hope. Neither can exist without the other. In mythic terms, the Lich fulfills the same role as ancient dragons, serpents, or cosmic destroyers from old human stories. Forces that heroes must confront not to win, but to understand themselves. The act of facing such a being transforms the hero, revealing their strength, their weakness, and their purpose. Finn's growth mirrors this pattern perfectly. The Lich gives his journey weight. Without him, adventure would be play. With him, it becomes meaning. The Lich's perfection also exposes the limits of the hero's journey. A hero seeks balance, but balance implies change, and the Lich cannot change. He is a static truth, death, inevitable and unmoving. Every time Finn meets him, it is less a battle of fists and more a test of faith. Can he continue to believe in life, in friendship, in love, knowing that all of it will end? The hero's role is not to defeat the Lich permanently, but to choose life anyway. This is the essence of Oo's moral structure. The Lich represents the end of narrative, and the hero represents the continuation of it. To live in defiance of him is to tell stories, to create meaning, to laugh. The Lich's silence is the final page of every book. The hero's voice is the decision to keep writing until the ink runs dry. Each one needs the other to exist. And yet, their relationship is not one of hatred. The Lich does not hate the hero. He simply waits for him. He knows that even the bravest will one day rest. The hero does not hate the Lich. He knows that without him, his courage would mean nothing. This quiet acknowledgement that they complete each other gives their conflict a strange serenity. It is not chaos, but balance. Finn's final understanding of the Lich reflects this maturity. He realizes that to live is to fight, but not to win forever. The fight itself, the choice to keep going, is the point. The Lich gives that fight its purpose. Every victory against him is temporary, but that impermanence is what makes it beautiful. If goodness were permanent, it would lose its meaning. If life were eternal, it would lose its urgency. The Lich ensures that neither happens. Ultimately, the Lich's role is not to destroy heroes, but to define them. He draws the line they must cross, the fear they must face, the silence they must answer with sound. Without him, there would be no reason to act bravely, no reason to care deeply, no reason to live fully. The Lich gives Ooo something priceless, a reason. And so, every time a hero rises, he rises because the Lich exists. Every act of love, every small kindness, every song sung under a dying sky, all of them echo against his stillness. He is not the end of the story. He is the reason the story keeps being told. The Lich has been defeated many times, yet never truly destroyed. Each time the world breathes a sigh of relief, believing it has reached the end of his story, something remains, a trace, a whisper, a seed. The pattern is as old as Ooo itself. The Lich rises, the Lich falls, and from the silence of his fall, life blooms again. But beneath that renewal, he waits. The cycle never truly breaks, because in Ooo there is no such thing as an ending. Every supposed conclusion in Ooo carries within it the shape of continuation. Even the most triumphant victories are followed by stillness. A stillness that feels familiar, that hums faintly with the Lich's presence. He does not need to return immediately. He knows the world will come back to him eventually. The Lich's greatest strength is not his power to destroy, but his ability to linger. He survives through the memory of endings, haunting the living with the quiet truth that finality is never final. When the Lich is defeated, the heroes call it peace. But peace in Ooo is never the absence of threat. It is the breath between heartbeats, a pause in the cycle of creation and decay. Life rushes to fill the silence he leaves behind. Kingdoms rebuild, friendships deepen, laughter returns. Yet underneath that noise, something watches, silent and patient. That is the Lich's true domain, not the battlefield, but the waiting that follows. Symbolically, his false endings represent the illusion of closure. The living crave neat conclusions, tidy borders between what has ended and what begins. But the universe does not work that way. Even after the final curtain falls, echoes remain. The Lich is that echo. He is the residue of every ending, the quiet voice that reminds us that nothing ever disappears completely. Stories continue in the minds that remember them, just as death continues in the world that lives on after it. In this sense, the Lich's repeated defeats are not failures of narrative, but affirmations of its depth. Each ending reaffirms that time in Ooo is circular, not linear. The past does not vanish, it folds into the present. When the Lich falls, he becomes part of the soil, part of the air, part of the silence. He seeps into the background of existence, waiting until life grows loud enough again to call him back. Philosophically, this cycle reflects the way endings function in our own world. Nothing ever truly ends, it only changes form. Death becomes memory. Destruction becomes creation. Absence becomes awareness. The Lich embodies that transformation. Not as hope, but as inevitability. He teaches that every conclusion is merely a transition, that the idea of a permanent end is itself an illusion born from fear. Visually, this theme is reflected in the way Ooo handles ruin. Old cities become forests. Machines rust into mountains. The remnants of the old world are not gone, they are reimagined. The same is true of the Lich. When he falls, his form may crumble, but his essence adapts. He is always reborn in a new shape, a reminder that the universe recycles everything, even evil. The heroes, too, learn from these false endings. Each time they think they have vanquished him, they grow more aware of the truth he represents. Finn learns that victory is not permanence, but perseverance. Jake learns that peace is not static, but fragile. Princess Bubblegum learns that control cannot prevent change, that even perfection contains decay. These lessons come not from his destruction, but from his return. The Lich teaches by refusing to stay gone. What makes his false endings so haunting is their gentleness. The Lich does not return with thunder and fury. He returns through quiet persistence, a faint glow, a shadow in the corner, a thought that feels too still. His comebacks are not grand, they are inevitable. This subtlety makes his power feel larger than any explosion could. He is not a moment of terror, he is the constant condition beneath all moments. The repetition of his downfall and re-emergence also serves as a reflection of the world's psychology. The people of Ooo need to believe in endings to keep living. They need to believe that evil can be defeated, that tomorrow can be safe. The Lich allows that illusion because it keeps life moving. He does not need to destroy hope directly. He only needs to remind the world that hope is temporary. His absence is part of his plan, a silence that grows heavy until it must break again. But perhaps the most important truth hidden in his false endings is that the Lich himself is bound by the same illusion. He believes in the finality of destruction, yet he too cannot escape continuation. Every time he falls, he returns, proving that even annihilation cannot erase itself. The destroyer, trapped in his own cycle, becomes proof of the thing he despises, persistence. He cannot finish, because finishing would mean ceasing to exist. The Lich's eternal return is his curse and his purpose. In mythic terms, this makes him less a villain and more a cosmic rhythm. He is not a character who acts, but a force that recurs, marking time through endings. The heroes may defeat him, but they never end him, because he is the pattern itself, the necessary stillness that follows every crescendo. To end the Lich would be to end motion, and Ooo cannot survive without movement. This understanding transforms how we view the so-called victories over him. When Finn stands triumphant, when the light returns, when Ooo exhales, it is not because evil has been eradicated, it is because life has learned, once again, how to continue. Each ending becomes a renewal of that knowledge. The Lich's downfall is not erasure, it is repetition. He falls so that life can rise again, and life rises so that he can fall. Symbolically, these false endings reflect the cycles of natural life: day and night, growth and decay, birth and death. Each phase gives meaning to the next. The Lich's return is as natural as spring following winter, except he is not the winter. He is the frost that reminds the world how fragile warmth truly is. His defeat is not a victory, but a rhythm. And so, when we look back at his many ends, we begin to see them differently. They are not mistakes in the story. They are reminders that the story never stops. Oo's survival is not about banishing the Lich forever, but learning to live with his shadow, to dance in his presence, to love in spite of him, to find meaning, knowing he will one day return. Every time he falls, the world forgets him a little, and every time he rises, the world remembers what it means to live. His false endings are not failures of closure, they are celebrations of continuation. The Lich shows that the end of something is never the end of everything. Because as long as there is a story to tell, the Lich will be waiting at its last page, patient, silent, and ready to turn it once more. At first, the Lich seems to be a creature of words. His voice, deep and calm, carries the weight of ancient knowledge. His sentences sound like prophecies, his tone like inevitability. But beneath the surface of his language lies something more terrifying than speech: silence. The Lich's true power is not in what he says, but in what happens after he has spoken. His words do not merely command, they erase the need for words at all. Language is one of Oo's defining traits. Every being, from the smallest candy citizen to the grandest cosmic entity, expresses itself in sound, in rhythm, in emotion. Ooo is a world built from conversation, from the exchange of stories and songs. Even its chaos is communicative. To speak in Ooo is to be alive. To stop speaking is to begin fading. The Lich represents the end of that communication, the point where meaning collapses and silence becomes absolute. When he speaks, the Lich uses language the way a sculptor uses a chisel. Each word removes something: hope, conviction, connection. His speech is not additive, it is subtractive. Every sentence leaves less behind than before. His voice scrapes away at meaning until all that remains is emptiness disguised as truth. To hear him is to feel understanding dissolve, not because he confuses, but because he clarifies too completely. He reduces everything to its simplest conclusion: nothing. But the true horror begins when he no longer needs to speak. The silence that follows him is heavier than any sound. It fills space like a substance, pressing down until thought itself becomes sluggish. This is the silence beyond language, the point where the world no longer remembers how to describe itself. In that stillness, stories stop, music withers, even the imagination falters. The Lich's presence is the suffocation of meaning. Philosophically, this silence represents the ultimate entropy, not physical decay, but semantic decay. The universe of Ooo is held together by communication, names, relationships, promises. When the Lich enters a scene, those connections weaken. Words lose their power to bind. Promises mean nothing to him because meaning itself ceases to exist in his presence. His silence is not absence, it is dominance, a reality where language no longer applies. In many mythologies, creation begins with sound, a divine word, a note, a vibration that gives shape to the void. The Lich reverses that process. His silence uncreates. It pulls the world back toward the state before language, before order, before differentiation. His power is not simply to end life, but to end the idea of life, to erase the vocabulary that once contained it. To face the Lich is to feel one's own thoughts flatten into blankness. This is why the Lich's presence feels cosmic rather than personal. He does not destroy in anger or cruelty. He destroys because destruction is what remains when meaning stops moving. His silence is the logical end of existence, when everything has been said and nothing remains to be said again. Visually, this silence often manifests as still frames. No wind, no motion, no colour shifting. The air becomes static, like a paused world. Even when the Lich speaks, the environment seems to resist reacting. It listens, but does not answer. This visual technique mirrors his philosophical role. He freezes dialogue itself. Oo's usual rhythm of question and response, action and reaction, ceases. The Lich does not participate in the dance of conversation. He ends it. This also explains why his presence often feels dreamlike. The closer one gets to him, the less the world behaves according to logic. The edges blur, sound muffles, time stretches thin. It is as though reality itself hesitates, uncertain whether to continue speaking its own story. The Lich's silence is contagious, not as noise, but as absence. In a way, this is the ultimate corruption. Earlier, we saw how the Lich spreads despair, how he infects ideas. But this stage goes beyond infection. This is dissolution, the point where meaning no longer has the strength to replicate itself. When words fail, memory fails. When memory fails, identity unravels. The Lich's silence is the final erasure, the quiet undoing of everything that defines being. And yet, within that horror lies something profound. The silence he brings is not only terrifying, it is also absolute peace. Without language, there can be no conflict. Without memory, there can be no pain. The Lich offers a kind of serenity so deep it becomes indistinguishable from oblivion. This is why his silence feels sacred as well as horrifying. It is not chaos, it is completion. His stillness is what remains when everything unnecessary has been stripped away. This duality, horror and peace, makes his silence philosophically complex. To the living, it feels like annihilation. To the cosmos, it may feel like balance. The Lich's silence is the sound of the universe at rest. The same quiet that follows a life well lived follows everything when he is near. He is the embodiment of that universal hush. For the heroes, facing this silence means confronting their own fear of meaninglessness. They are beings made of words, their friendships, promises, and hopes are linguistic constructs. When the Lich takes language away, they lose the ability to define themselves. To resist him, they must rediscover meaning without words, through actions, through presence, through the simple choice to keep being. This is why their victories are often wordless, a gesture, a look, a heartbeat. Life answers silence not with argument, but with existence. Symbolically, the Lich's silence mirrors the act of sleep. To fall asleep is to surrender language, to let the mind drift into a space where words lose shape. Yet from that silence, dreams emerge, fragile stories that reassemble meaning in new forms. The Lich's silence is like that, but without the dreaming. It is the endless sleep of the universe before waking. And here lies the paradox. His silence gives rise to song. The more he erases language, the more desperately life clings to it. Every poem, every melody, every whisper of love in Ooo is born from the need to resist his quiet. The heroes speak precisely because the Lich wants them to stop. The act of storytelling itself, of this story, is defiance. As long as we tell it, he cannot win. Ultimately, the silence beyond language is not something the Lich imposes, it is something he reveals. It is the truth that waits at the bottom of all words, the void that language hides but never escapes. His presence makes that truth visible, and when Ooo speaks again after he is gone, its voice trembles, knowing what silence sounds like, because the Lich is not merely the end of speech. He is the silence that makes speech possible. Without him, words would never matter. For most who live in Ooo, the Lich represents fear, the fear of ending, of silence, of nothingness. Yet if one looks deeply enough into that nothingness, something else appears, peace. Beneath the terror, there is quiet. Beneath destruction, there is balance. The Lich, stripped of his monstrous image, reveals himself not as chaos, but as order. He is not the disruption of the universe, but its conclusion, the moment when everything at last rests. Life in Ooo is relentless. Every day brings new creation, new energy, new transformation. Even in sleep, dreams burst with colour and movement. The world never truly stops. Its kingdoms rise and crumble. Its heroes live and die. Its magic reshapes itself endlessly. The Lich stands outside this noise, a fixed point, perfectly still, perfectly certain. His void is not rage, it is resolution. He represents the end of striving, the quiet after completion. To understand this, one must look at the Lich without judgment. He does not seek revenge or pleasure. He does not gloat, and he does not grieve. His calmness is not indifference, it is acceptance. He accepts the universe's most fundamental truth, that everything ends. Where others resist that truth, he becomes it. In that sense, he is not the enemy of life. but the acceptance that makes life bearable. Philosophically, this makes the Lich a figure of paradoxical serenity. He embodies the peace that comes when all questions have been answered, all struggles resolved, all desires quieted. His void is not hostile, it is tranquil. The same stillness that terrifies the living could also be seen as release, freedom from longing, from fear, from pain. In his silence, the world's noise finally fades, leaving only equilibrium. This peace is what separates the Lich from chaos. Golb's nothingness is unformed and meaningless. It dissolves all things without intention. The Lich's nothingness, however, is deliberate, even graceful. He does not scatter, he concludes. His void has structure. It is the last note of a song, the final breath of a story told in full. When he speaks of ending all life, he does not imagine fire and destruction, he imagines rest. A universe without movement, without hunger, without change. A universe at peace. To the living, that peace looks like horror, but perhaps the horror is only perspective. Every creature clings to motion, believing that stillness is death. Yet all movement eventually seeks stillness. Waves crash to rest on the shore, storms fade into calm, hearts beat until they stop. The Lich embodies that final calm. He is the still water after the flood, the quiet sky after thunder. What the living call annihilation, he calls completion. Visually, this is why his presence feels cold, but not violent. The Lich does not burn or break, he drains. His power feels like gravity, pulling things into their natural centre. It is not chaos, it is gravity's mercy, the return of all things to where they belong. He does not hate life for moving, he simply waits for its motion to slow, for its pulse to rest. His patience is infinite, because he knows that rest always wins. The Lich's stillness also carries a strange beauty. When life exhausts itself, when the last spark fades, there is something pure in what remains, a universe unburdened by striving. His void could be seen as the universe's deepest exhale. Not a scream, not a collapse, but a letting go. This is why his calm feels sacred. He is the shadow of peace itself, the quiet truth that follows every moment of creation. In this light, the Lich becomes less of an antagonist and more of a cosmic necessity. He is not opposing life's movement, but balancing it. Without him, the world would spiral endlessly, unable to pause, unable to reflect. His presence gives existence, rhythm, motion, and rest. Sound and silence, birth and death. Each half defines the other. Without his void, there would be no meaning in fullness. Without his end, beginnings would lose their wonder. This balance is visible even in Oo's cycles of destruction and renewal. Every apocalypse births a new age. Every ruin becomes soil for something strange and alive. The Lich's peace is part of that rhythm, not its end, but its pause. He does not prevent new life from forming, he merely ensures that it does not last forever. His void is the rest between notes, the breath that allows the song to continue. The heroes of Ooo come to understand this, even if they do not say it aloud. Finn, who once saw every fight as a victory to be won, begins to see endings differently. He learns that not all endings are failures, some are necessary. Jake, in his quiet wisdom, accepts the idea that peace can be found in letting go. Marceline, who has lived too long, understands the comfort of rest. Even Princess Bubblegum, obsessed with order, learns that control is not the same as balance. Each of them, in their own way, learns the peace the Lich represents, and the danger of mistaking it for despair. Philosophically, this piece aligns with the ancient idea that creation and destruction are partners, not enemies. The Lich embodies destruction as mercy, the act of returning things to their simplest form. His void does not scream, it sighs. It is the peace that remains when all suffering ends, not through triumph, but through stillness. Yet this stillness is not something the living can accept easily. To live is to resist the void, to create motion where there is stillness, meaning where there is none. The Lich's peace, though beautiful, is not for the living. It belongs to the universe after it has finished breathing. That is why he terrifies Oo's inhabitants, not because he lies, but because he tells the truth too early. His peace is the one that waits at the end of all stories, the one we are not yet ready to meet. In this sense, the Lich is both warning and promise. He warns that all things end, and he promises that the ending will be quiet. His peace is not vengeance, it is inevitability. He does not demand worship or fear. He only reminds the universe that one day all things will rest. There is comfort in that, if one listens closely enough. The same peace that terrifies us also sustains us. Every night when Ooo grows silent, when the kingdoms sleep and the stars hum softly above, that is the Lich's peace, not in cruelty, but in calm. The stillness of rest is his gentler face. He is present even in peace, whispering that rest is not failure, that stillness is not loss. And so, when his void expands at the end of the world, it will not roar, it will sigh. The noise of life will fade, not in agony, but in resolution. The last echo of existence will be quiet, even kind. Because the Lich's peace is not destruction, it is completion. The closing of the circle, the return of everything to silence. In the peace of the void, there is no fear, no hunger, no pain. Only balance, only rest. And in that rest, the Lich finally fulfills his purpose, not to destroy, but to finish. Every story in Ooo, no matter how strange, leads toward a single question. Why does the Lich exist? Not merely how, or when, or what he wants, but why. What place could such a being hold in a world so full of colour, laughter, and life? To answer that question is to understand the nature of Ooo itself, because the Lich is not its enemy, he is its completion. From the beginning, the Lich has been the shadow behind every act of creation. When the world was reborn after the Great War, his essence was already there, woven into its foundation. He is not foreign to Ooo, he is Oo's memory of its own destruction. Every flower that blooms grows from the soil of something that once died, and every sunrise rises from the darkness before it. The Lich is that darkness, not evil for its own sake, but the necessary ground against which light defines itself. His purpose is not chaos, it is clarity. He exists to remind the living that all things are temporary, that life without endings becomes meaningless. The Lich is the stillness that gives motion purpose, the silence that gives song its shape. Without him, Ooo would drift into endless noise, forgetting that even joy requires contrast. He does not hate life, he reveals its boundaries. He is the reason life knows where it ends. Throughout Oo's history, every kingdom, every creature, every act of creation repeats the same rhythm: rise, fall, rise again. That rhythm is not accidental. It is the pulse of the universe, expansion and contraction, being and unbeing. The Lich is the contraction. He is the inhale after the exhale, the return of energy to its source. Without contraction, there can be no expansion. Without rest, no motion. The Lich's purpose is to ensure that balance continues, that the cycle does not break. And yet, his role is not purely mechanical. The Lich's presence carries meaning. He is not just a function, he is a teacher, a dark, silent, unintentional teacher. Every being who faces him learns something fundamental about existence. Finn learns that heroism is not victory, but choice. Princess Bubblegum learns that control cannot save everything. Marceline learns that immortality without love is emptiness. Even Jake, ever at ease, learns that peace is not something found by escaping death, but by accepting it. The Lich's existence makes those lessons possible. Philosophically, the Lich is the embodiment of truth stripped of comfort. He does not lie, he does not exaggerate. His every word is accurate. All things end, all creations fade, all stories conclude. The horror he represents comes not from deception, but from honesty. The Lich's truth is unbearable only because it is undeniable. He shows the universe the mirror it spends eternity avoiding. His purpose is to make existence conscious of itself, to force life to see what it is built upon. But the brilliance of Ooo lies in what the world does with that truth. Instead of surrendering to despair, its inhabitants transform it. They build kingdoms, sing songs, fall in love, and laugh, all in defiance of what the Lich represents. His stillness creates motion. His silence creates music. His inevitability creates courage. The Lich's greatest irony is that, by existing, he ensures the persistence of the very thing he seeks to end. Every act of life in Ooo is a response to him. He is the void that makes meaning possible. Visually, this is reflected in how his shadow defines the world's light. Wherever the Lich appears, colour drains from the frame, yet when he vanishes, the colours return brighter, more vivid, more alive. His absence enhances presence. The darkness he brings does not extinguish, it sharpens contrast. Even his defeats are creative acts, because they make the living reaffirm their desire to live. The Lich's purpose also reflects a deeper metaphysical truth about Oo's structure, that destruction and creation are the same process viewed from different ends. When something ends, it makes space for something new. When something dies, it becomes nourishment for what will grow next. The Lich's void is not a wasteland, but a womb, the stillness in which the next moment gestates. His end is not the end, it is the clearing of the stage for the next act. This cyclical nature explains why he cannot be destroyed. To destroy him completely would mean destroying the universe's ability to renew itself. Without the Lich, there would be no reason to rebuild, no value in motion, no understanding of peace. His immortality is the immortality of endings themselves. As long as something can begin, he must remain, because beginnings require ends to exist. There is also an emotional dimension to his purpose, one that ties him to the viewer. The Lich embodies the quiet fear within all sentient life, that everything we love will end. But by personifying that fear, Adventure Time makes it visible, nameable, almost approachable. The Lich allows the audience to confront mortality through story, to see that the end is not something to fear, but something to understand. His calm, his poise, his certainty, all reflect a truth that can be accepted rather than fled from. In this sense, the Lich's purpose extends beyond Ooo. He is the embodiment of our own acceptance of impermanence. And yet, for all his cosmic certainty, the Lich is incomplete without the living. His existence depends on theirs. He is the shadow cast by life's light, the echo of its song. Without motion, there would be no stillness. Without sound, no silence. His purpose is relational. He completes life by ending it, and life completes him by resisting. The two form the universe's most essential dialogue, not a war, but a conversation between being and non-being. This balance turns the Lich from a villain into a principle. His evil is only perceived as evil because we experience the world from the side of life. From the side of the universe, he is not cruel. He is necessary. Every act of kindness in Ooo, every invention, every friendship, every song gains meaning because it will one day end. The Lich is the reminder of that horizon. He is the promise that meaning is possible precisely because it cannot last forever. The Lich's peace, then, is not something to flee, but something to understand. His silence is the same silence that surrounds stars, that fills the spaces between atoms. His void is the same void from which everything once emerged. In his calm, we hear the echo of the beginning, the quiet hum before creation started speaking. The Lich is not only the end, he is the memory of the start. The universe, in him, folds back upon itself. And perhaps this is his truest purpose, to close the circle. In the same way that every heartbeat ends where it begins, the Lich ensures that existence remains whole by reminding it of its limits. He is not the destroyer of meaning, but its guardian, the boundary that keeps meaning from dissolving into excess. By holding the end steady, he allows life to bloom freely within it. The Lich's purpose is not to win, but to be, to exist as the certainty that gives all uncertainty shape. He does not seek to rule, because the end rules nothing. He does not seek to change, because change is life's domain. His role is to remain, still, inevitable, uncorrupted. The Lich is the still point around which the wheel of Ooo turns, the silence that holds all its noise together. When we understand that, the fear of him fades. What once looked like evil begins to look like symmetry. His voice becomes less a curse and more a whisper of truth, that all things will rest, and that rest is not failure. The heroes of Ooo may never accept him, but they come to understand him, and in that understanding lies peace. Because the Lich's purpose is not destruction, it is completion. He is the quiet that waits at the edge of every heartbeat, the stillness beneath every song, the final kindness of time. His shadow is not the absence of light, but the space that allows light to exist, and when the world of Ooo finally grows silent, when its colours fade and its stories cease, the Lich will not arrive as a conqueror. He will arrive as calm, not to take, but to finish, not to punish, but to rest. And in that final stillness, his purpose will be fulfilled, and the universe, for the first and only time, will know perfect peace.